Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, making new laws. Also, the V-Team takes a look at childhood poverty. And it's an exciting race toward the finish line and the elections. Yeah. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V-Team. Welcome all.
Hello.
Hey, Josh.
Hey, how y'all?
30 days until people go to the polls to vote, and Jack, this has been an absolute snoozer.
Snooze fest.
Snooze fest.
Yeah, no question. You know, I think the conventional wisdom is that Kay Ivey's going to win. And there's not much excitement. Nobody's spending any money. Money's tight this year. So, you know, you've got a couple of, you know, the Kay Ivey, Walt Mannix races, you know, going to be semi-interesting. I don't know about Marshall and Siegelman. I think Marshall probably wins. And there are a couple of other local races that have sparked some interest, but it's kind of, to be this close, it's pretty daggum quiet.
I mean, it feels like somebody moved Christmas, Susan. I mean, normally there's some excitement and all that, and it's like, well, you know, Santa Claus is passing this year.
And I mean, this is a Christmas that only comes every 4 years, folks. Yeah. And I mean, it's just nothing. I mean, it's so quiet. It's like, you know, you've got a Christmas tree in the corner and no presents.
Yeah.
You know, because as reporters and as politicos, we look forward to this. This is like, you know, our game day.
Josh, you can't get the governor to do anything except show for ribbon cuttings, and she says nobody cares, and of course she cares that we don't care.
Yeah. It's kind of weird to me the way that it has been so quiet. You know, because it almost feels like all right, we're just going to go status quo. You know, and that's kind of what it seems like here with Kay Ivey at the top of this. Is that all right? We're just going to go with the status quo again, which everybody complains about the rest of the time.
Yeah.
And then they're going to go with that. So I just don't really understand the mindset here. But it seems as though everybody has kind of settled on that, and they're unhappy with the fact that they've settled on that.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make a lot of sense.
That's back to my analogy where, you know, Dad comes in and says, I'm sorry, Santa Claus called and said he ain't coming this year. But, you know, and that's a good point there, status quo. I was talking to a Republican consultant, and he was in there talking to some leaderships about, you know, PACs and all that, about how, yeah, man, I think we'll pick up 3 or 4 more Republican seats. And the guy goes, ho, we got enough damn Republicans. We get blamed for everything. We need a more even split so that we can share some of the blame here.
Yeah.
Well, one thing the Republicans did learn from the Democrats is how to make money off being in office.
That's for sure. Yeah, that's for sure. Well, there's no lack of that. One thing we did, I want to transition here. I don't know how you segue out of that. But one of the things we saw this week, Chip Brownlee reported on, and I don't know that there's a solution here, but the new report by Voices for Alabama Children, they do a data book every year, Susan, and it shows that poverty among children is higher today than it was in 2000. I mean, I found that to be a shocking statistic.
Yeah, some 26% of children in Alabama are in poverty or living in poverty. And another statistic under that is 30% of those children are under 5 years old. Now, you get a couple of indicators here that, and a lot of these are most of these are working families. So you're not talking about these people that are out here on welfare or this or that or the other. Of course, that plays into it some too. But we're looking at families not being able to make enough money to take care of their children. This also, to me, points to teen pregnancy as well. Because if you have kids that are dropping out of school because they're pregnant or they're young so they can't get more than a minimum wage job. So we've got some other indicators that really, that this is an indicator of other things that are wrong with our society here in Alabama.
Jack, we can ask how, and I have no answers here, but we can ask, does government have a role here? There's a reason to say not really. There's also a reason to say that if they're going to take credit for all the good things, maybe they should get blamed for some of the bad things.
I think government does have a responsibility to help bring jobs to Alabama, but anybody can work in a factory, making small things and all that, but we really need to focus, and I know some of our state leaders are really working on it. We need to bring better jobs to Alabama, not just jobs to Alabama.
Yeah.
And government does have a role, but government can't fix every social ill in the state.
Some of the jobs we're bringing to Alabama, we're bringing the jobs, but also our workforce is not trained to do those jobs. So a lot of those jobs are being filled by people from out of state, too.
Yeah, because as I constantly beat the horn or beat the drum saying our people are undereducated, underemployed, and unhealthy. And Josh, we keep hearing about how we have such a great state, and I believe that's true. But if we had great leaders, I don't think we would have the type of poverty, the type of dead last that we are.
Yeah, you said, is government, does government bear some, responsibility, or is there a solution in government? Well, I kind of think that this is more the symptom of a bad government over many years. I don't think you get to this point where you have perpetually a high number of kids living in poverty, and it grows over the course of 20 years, basically here, without having some problems throughout your state. And I think it all kind of starts with education, and you find, honest to God, you find very few poor people with college educations, or that are highly educated people. It's just kind of hand in hand, and so that's a big problem that we have here. And it's not just college education. People who are trained, who have certificates to work in different industries and in different jobs through tech schools or whatever other kind of training that they have, those people are very rarely living in poverty. You do have some of that, but you don't have the high numbers that we have, and I think that's part of the problem. I think another big problem with this is whenever you find impoverished people by a large number, you often find problems with health care. And God knows we've got problems with health care and the availability of health care here with people, and it's going to get worse with the Medicaid work requirements that are out there and some other things, and the lack of expansion of Medicaid here. I think that's a big problem.
One of the things that Will Ainsworth this past week, I think it was, said to the Jasper Mountain Daily or Daily Mountain Eagle was that he was tired of our state being last in most good indicators, and he was tired of politicians on both sides of the aisle that embarrassed our state. I think Will has absolutely encapsulated what a lot of us feel. We cannot continue to be dead last or near last, and we've got to get rid of the corrupt politicians. We're going to have to leave it right there. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with more news and Jack. Scary.
You'll never guess what 400,000 people in the U.S. were using when they crashed their cars last year. No, not this. This. Distracted driving will kill you. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
I am the proud mother of Ethan Everman. Ethan has autism, diagnosed when he was around 4. It was a really tough time for us. We went to go get speech therapy and ABA therapy and realized that none of it was covered, which was really amazing to us. Tom Watley decided that he needed to try to make this bill pass, and he did. And because of Tom, children now get the therapy that they need, and he was a voice for the children in Alabama who didn't have a voice.
The Energy Institute of Alabama is the best source of energy industry information and how it affects households across the state, from convenient energy production to alternative fuels to solar power and beyond.
Two-thirds of drivers who died in car crashes chose to ignore this warning. Seatbelts save lives. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. Jack, during the break, you said you wanted to stay on the thing that Will Ainsworth mentioned. And Will is running for lieutenant governor. He's the Republican nominee, and the Democratic challenger, unlike other Democratic challengers, doesn't really stand a chance against Will Ainsworth. That's like a juggernaut there. So Will said, he's tired of being dead last. He's tired of politicians on both sides of the aisle embarrassing us. What, you got some thoughts?
Well,
on that?
he's one of the few politicians that'll say that out loud,
Yeah.
and I take my hat off to Will for that. But the bottom line is we don't have any money. And we don't have any money because we don't have a tax base. Mm-hmm. We don't have a tax base because the legislature, for time in memoriam, has been cowardly about doing what really needs to be done. And we all know we could help solve this big hole in the budget with, some people say expansion of Medicaid. I don't really care about that one way or the other. We could have a lottery. We could put a tax on cigarettes. And we could maybe have a pact with the Indians. I don't know if all three of those are possible, but it would bring in a hell of a lot of money.
Well, and like you're saying, Jack, it's not just one thing is the solution. We're going to have to come up with a package deal here that says we're going to address this from all different areas instead of just saying, well, the lottery will fix it. Well, Medicaid will fix it. Why don't they look at what all we can do together to fix it?
Because that takes genuine leadership, right, Josh?
Well, yeah, it does. And,
I know.
And I agree with what Governor in Waiting Will Ainsworth said there. But it's going to take all those things are great. I agree. Probably that at this point we ought to have a lottery or some gambling funds that come into here, and the expansion of Medicaid would bring in a lot of money. But the one way that we fix this is to go back and fix our tax structure here to where secretaries are not paying more than their bosses, and which is the way that we have it set up now. We are the most regressive tax state in the country at this point. And until we fix that, we are always going to have a hole here. Until the poor people are paying a larger percentage than the rich people, we're always going to have this hole that we have. And it's going to, because at some point, the gambling revenues and things like that are going to catch up. The cigarette revenues are going to catch up, and we're going to spend those in other places. Until we have this thing fixed in our tax structure, it's not going to work.
Well, Dr. David Bronner, the CEO of the very successful RSA, and probably one of the brightest men in Alabama, he came out there. He had an op-ed in our news section or our opinion section this week, in which he said we need to change the tax structure. We also, Jack, he said we needed to institute sports betting. He said it's all around us.
I don't do it, but I mean, it brings in a lot of cash.
Yeah.
Well, I don't do it either. But
I don't know how.
but I can tell you, a lot of my friends also don't do it. So,
Yeah.
Did Stephanie let you put that trophy on the mantle or not?
Well, there you go.
And of course, you've got all these people out there, all these Bible-beating Republicans, there ain't that many of them anymore, that say they don't like the lottery because it's gambling.
Well,
then
then
you've got
don't play.
Alpha and you've got Forestry. Oh, no, we can't tax our timberland where these big corporations own millions of acres. We can't do that. I mean,
Alpha is the only group that I've ever seen that hates every tax and wants every premium tax break under the sun.
No doubt.
I mean, they get millions and millions of tax breaks, and these phonies sit over there and they think they can dictate to the state what it should do in taxes. Meanwhile, they're just filling their coffers with corrupt
That
money.
has always been the problem.
Yeah.
Here. That has always been the problem. The tax structure is based on making the wealthy more wealthy
Yeah.
here. And until we fix that basic thing there, and it doesn't have to be this huge thing that burdens some people.
I mean,
it doesn't
come
have
on.
to be that.
I mean, Alpha, they need to get rid of Jethro and the Bodines over there and get some people in there to have some sense. I mean, you can't have the brains of a cow's back end and think that you're thinking it through. They're not thinking it through.
And a lot of times what happens
Does that
is they
mean-
get hurt on the back end of this, where they have to, because of the tax base that we're not getting, then they have to spend money on private schools and on all these other things and car repairs and stuff that they have to fix because we don't have the money on the front end to have these good things because they're trying to keep it from the poor
Well,
people.
I mean, heck, when we brought up the thing that Alpha was getting, $20, $30 million a year in tax breaks, they went after us. They went after everybody. They told lawmakers, you take away our money and we'll run somebody against you. I'd slap them in the face if they told me that. I had to wash my hands afterwards. Jesus. All right, let's
But
move
it happens
on.
every legislative session.
Wow.
I just, listen, the phonies say no taxes increases, but they're over here sucking off the government teeth.
Meanwhile, 26% of our children are in poverty. Don't
Yeah,
forget.
there you go. Well, one follows.
Oh, you had to go back to
I
that
know.
idea.
Well, hey, one relates to the other.
Hey, we got about 2 minutes here, and I do want to get to this. Steve Marshall, one of my favorite guys. He's right up there with
Jesse James.
Jesse James. No, it was Charles Manson, I think.
Yeah.
It went worse. It went worse. I go Jesse James like, no, Charles Manson.
Manson. Can't you see him as a Manson type character? Really nice and charming, but underneath just evil and full of vile and vitriol. Anyway, he's running against Joe Siegel.
Men.
I got that in there too, didn't I?
Get that upper plate fixed.
Yeah, I'm working on it. I hadn't had my dentures adjusted. My poly grip is not gripping, Jack. But anyway, Marshall outraised him in September 2-1. But they ended up at the end of the month with about the same amount of money. And Marshall's biggest expense went to some company whose address, Jack, is in the middle of a field in Etowah County.
What is it, Al?
Owl's Hollow.
Owl's Hollow Road.
OWLS.
Yeah, I Google
Hollow.
mapped it and you can't find them.
Yeah, it's just a dirt road with trees on
Well,
each
they
side.
paved they paved.
Well,
the-
Marshall is
Okay.
a consultant's paradise. I mean, if you want to put all your money with a consultant, go ahead.
Yeah, he's good at that. He's got a lot. He spent a bunch of money on
Yeah,
consultants.
you would think he would do better.
You know why he needs
With all the
consultants? Because
consulting.
he doesn't have a brain in his head. He has a dodo bird. Anyway,
But he needed somebody to tell him it was okay to take that $735,000 from Raga. That's it.
I guess that's
That
it.
it wasn't illegal, even though it is.
Well, I mean,
Has the Ethics Commission looked at that at all?
no.
They have not.
No, they met on October 3rd this week, and they failed to look at it. And their next meeting is right before the general or right after the general. They're not going to take it up, Jack, because they don't want to have to rule that he took this money illegally. We're going to have to leave it right there. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
You'll never guess what 400,000 people in the U.S. were using when they crashed their cars last year. No, not this. This. Distracted driving will kill you. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
Hey, I'm Rick.
And I'm Bubba from the Rick and Bubba Show. And if you know anything about us, you know we like to have fun.
However, there's one thing that's no laughing matter. We believe that everyone should be registered to vote, and they should have a qualified government-issued photo ID.
In order to have your voice heard and your vote counted, you must be registered to vote and have a photo ID.
Join Bubba and me and register to vote, and let's work together to make Alabama all it can be.
2/3 of drivers who died in car crashes chose to ignore this warning. Seatbelts save lives. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. Jack, that last segment seemed like a love fest. You know, it really did. I felt a lot of love in the room.
I would say that.
We didn't mention Hubbard, though. That could have been a real love fest.
No,
but...
or Billy Canary.
Oh, Billy Canary, yeah.
I mean,
we got those two names in, yeah.
But,
that's because they're dead men walking, like old ducks squawking. Anyway, I just thought there was a lot of love in the room.
Yeah, I could tell.
Yeah, I could tell. Jack said I should be careful cranking my car.
Yeah,
That's in Charlie has to crank the car for you.
Yeah. Hey, Josh, you covered the State Ethics Commission meeting this week.
Fun.
And these guys here, I mean, you know, if you gave the Marx Brothers a license to just run amok with state government, you could do no worse than with Jerry Fielding and Charlie Price and all that, Charles Price and all that gang.
Yeah, well, because the Marx Brothers wouldn't be intentionally trying to undermine laws, I don't think. And that's really what was taking place. You know, one of their rulings that they had this week that they voted on, they voted to give themselves more power in order to reduce the offenses gathered by people who violate campaign finance reporting laws. And, you know, they had previously taken it upon themselves, and which, in their defense, they did have the right under the law to reduce fines, that people could come before them and appeal fines because that was their only recourse of action there. And so they, in addition to that, though, now they have made it to where not only can they reduce the fines, they can also reduce the number of offenses. So they can basically say, yes, you violated it 5 times, but we're going to wipe away 4 of them or all 5 of them, or whatever, and make it as though you never did this. And the significance of that is under the law, after you violate campaign finance reporting laws 4 times, it then becomes an act of willful defiance of the law and is a criminal statute at that point, a Class C felony. So they have basically made it easier for people to do this and avoid criminal penalties, even if they mean to do it.
Could I ask a question? If I'm late filing my report, let's say I don't file it in February, March, April, or May, is that 4 separate offenses?
I believe that would be correct, yes.
I think
So what they're saying is, well, we're only going to reduce it to 1. It was the same offense, but you failed to do it 4 times.
Yeah.
We're going to fine you, but it's only counted as.
But also,
Which is wrong to me.
That opens a floodgate to say if you did it 15 times, it can still be reduced to 1.
Yeah.
Now, you can't tell me if somebody did it 15 times, that wasn't intentional.
Well, the biggest problem, though, is exactly what Jack said, is that you can, let's say a donation comes in 4 months prior to an election that you don't want to report.
Right.
You mean
You
like
don't want to have
$18,000 worth of in-kind services? Yeah.
Exactly. So you just hold it for 4 months, and then they come back and say, well, that was only 1. Well, you pay the one $300 fine, and you only get the 1 bump, where before that holding it would have been a crime, which it absolutely should be a crime to do that.
Well, it is a crime to do it. What they're doing is circumventing the law that's already written.
But
They're putting a little carrot in there and saying, unless the Ethics Commission says it's okay.
Brent Beal with the Secretary of State's office, which is about the only honest institution left over there, went over there and said, you don't have this right. And let me explain offense, let me explain the civil penalties, let me explain the difference. And they blew him off. And then Jerry Fielding, Judge Jerry Fielding, who went from being a Democrat to a Republican overnight, said that, well, since the Attorney General's office hasn't weighed in, and the DA's Association had not weighed in, that he felt that it was okay with them. Now, I don't know that their silence is necessarily
Acquiescence.
Acquiescence, correct, Judge.
I don't know. What? I just thought about something. Could it have something to do with $735,000 that's supposed to go before the
Well, I don't know. We've talked
Ethics
about that. We've
Commission?
talked about that.
You know, and that's the AG's office.
Well, we've talked about that, and I believe the thing that shocks me, and we've all seen this, whenever there has been a question in the law, the Attorney General's office, especially Matt Hart's unit, Josh, you've seen it, Jack, you've seen it, they are at those ethics commissions fighting. Now, there were lawyers there, but I asked someone at the Secretary of State's office, I said, well, did they just not care about this, or is something else wrong? And they just hemmed and hawed. They couldn't give me an answer. But I kind of feel like, you talked to Mike Lewis briefly over at the
they just said that they're studying it, and they're they'll weigh the decision at some later point.
Does this sound like heart to you?
But now, can the AG's office, they don't have to wait on the Ethics Commission to refer something, do they?
They don't, but
that's normally the course of action.
Yeah, but then, if that person who has broken the law here goes before the Ethics Commission and gets them to reduce it down, well, then the AG's office and the DAs are going to, and which was one of Bill's arguments at the Ethics Commission was, once they do that and you reduce it, well, then you've killed us. You've cut our legs out from underneath us.
Yeah, you can't prosecute it then because you go before a jury and you say, well, he broke the law 7 times. Yeah. They go, well, according to these guys, he didn't. Yeah.
And
we saw that in the Hubbard case.
We saw that in the Hubbard trial because of all of the contracts that Hubbard had, the one that they did not convict him on was the one that had been before the Ethics Commission, even though it was just as illegal as the other ones. Mm-hmm. Because the Ethics Commission said it was okay, that jury felt it was okay. And that's going to happen here.
Yeah. Well,
who's the third one? It's Price and Fielding. Who's the third?
The
Homer.
Yeah,
Butch Cassidy and
Butch
Ellis
and Columbiana. Yeah. They've all been they've all had jobs in state government.
Most
we need some more citizens on there.
Yeah, we do. We need somebody like like a Dick Brubaker or somebody like that to do it. But and the problem here is that the attorneys, the high-powered attorneys, get up before them and they bow down to them every single time.
Well, the state put it in place so that their budgets are safe. The Ethics Commission's budget is safe. They can't punish them or reward them. But what they didn't count on is that these guys having these crony relationships with lawyers and special interests. Mm-hmm. And they lobby them ex parte and get in there and get something done. And so we're just getting booed, screwed, and tattooed because these guys love the power and the schmoozing and all that stuff.
What they need to do is shorten the terms and rotate some people on and off.
Definitely
they really do.
How long are the terms?
4 or 5 years?
That'll be 2 years.
3 years too long, whatever it is.
I'm with you on this. Put Dick Brubaker over the whole bunch. Let him go in there and reform it. This guy is a rock-ribbed conservative who has an overactive sense of what's right and wrong.
And he's usually right.
And to Tom Albritton's credit, his hands are tied.
His hands are tied because he works
trying
for the
to do the right thing.
I like Tom, but he works for the commission and he has to do what they tell him. All right, we're going to have to leave it right there. You've been watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us because we watch them.